Hello and welcome to our extended disc webinar. Today's 15-minute webinar is on misconceptions about disc style. My name is Christina Bowser and I'm the training director here at Extended Disc, and joining me today is my colleague Marku Kapanen, president of Extended Disc.
Hi, Christina, and hello, everybody.
Hello, we are recording this webinar in case you want to review it later, or for those of your colleagues or anyone that wants to hear it later on, it will be on our website as well as on our YouTube channel. Because of the time frame, we don't take questions live, but please put them in the question section and we'll follow up with you after. So, Marku, last webinar of 2019.
Can you believe that?
Oh my gosh, where did it go?
I better start shopping for my kids, or otherwise it's going to be a very chilly Christmas.
Now, Marku, this particular webinar topic, we've done it before, but I really wanted Marku to come back and just help me review and just kind of remind even ourselves as DISC facilitators, not just our clients, but we all have misconceptions.
Oh yeah, we certainly do. And if we're kind of a starting point when you think about DISC, is that DISC itself is completely neutral. It makes absolutely no value judgments. There are no good or bad categories, high or low scores. But of course, as human beings, we hear this saying that when we meet somebody, those first impressions are really critical, because people do begin to form opinion about us, and we do the same about others. And our style really does have a huge impact how we see other people. And of course, the opposite is true as well. Other people, because of their own style, they make their value judgments about us. But the tool itself has no value judgment at all.
Right. I always tell people, you can excel in any area of your life. The extended DISC assessment, or DISC itself, it can't predict your success. It simply predicts how you prefer to do things.
Yeah, and I was just talking to somebody yesterday on the phone, of a client of ours, and I told her that one of the greatest things that I've been able to do in this business for, can't believe it, almost a quarter of a century now, is that I've met some really, really successful people. And one of the things that I've really been it's really just like it's a very profound thing, is that they come from such different backgrounds in terms of their education, what part of the world is, and also their DISC style. But what I've noticed that those successful people, the people that I really admire, they are so comfortable in their own skin. And it always reinforces me and reminds me that no matter who you are, you can be very successful, but you must have that confidence, self-awareness.
All right. So we're going to talk a little bit about biases and just kind of preconceived notions we have of others, and how those can turn into these kind of more deeply embedded misconceptions. But let's start off with let's make it simple. Let's just talk about each of the styles on its own first.
Yeah, and one thing, maybe kind of starting point also to think about is that, like, I'm a low I style. I'm pretty high on D, S, and C. And when I think about my own misconceptions, because I need to take an honest look at myself too, do I have those misconceptions? Now, I do. And my greatest misconceptions are about the I styles, because that is the lowest for me. And that is a good reminder for all of us that whatever is the lowest style for us, it's a D, I, or S, or C, that style tends to be the one that we have the greatest misconceptions about. And probably more importantly, we need to remember that those individuals have the greatest misconceptions about us. So it's really a two-way street when it comes to how we see each other. And we really need to be extremely aware and mindful when we are dealing with people who are very different from us.
Exactly. So, we were saying that's a topic we could talk on and on about in terms of misconceptions about our least comfortable style. So I'm just going to start off with the D style. So some of the attributes, kind of the descriptions that we would use to describe the D style, they're competitive, they're results oriented, they're decisive. But, when you think about the D styles being decisive, sometimes we only think of it in its most positive light, meaning that they make decisions and they make them quickly. They're large and in charge. However, what we sometimes forget is being decisive doesn't necessarily mean that they're always going to make good decisions or the best decisions. In fact, because D styles they're decisive, they want to do it quickly, especially if they're going to achieve results, they oftentimes end up taking risks and making sometimes poor decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, because when they make a mistake, they don't really worry about it. Say, hey, you win some, you lose some, they move on. So that reinforces that behavior, and they are very comfortable, like you said, make those quick decisions. And often they are the ones who don't make the right decisions. And maybe on top of that, if you think about the perspective, they tend to be very short term in their decision making process and everything that they do. So if they don't get the result they were hoping for right away, they just, okay, no big deal, and they move on. So they don't have the persistence to carry on what they really want to accomplish sometimes.
Right. And just another one, just we're not going to do everyone, but just you think of D styles as being competitive, right? I mean, when we think of the word competitive, who do we think about? Typically D style. However, it's not always about the winning for the D style. A lot of times they are that kind of individualistic style where they tend to think of their own individual goals. Sometimes, over the team goals, over the organizational goals. But they're all styles are looking for results. All styles are about being competitive.
Yeah, I can't help but think the holidays are upon us, and when my kids are coming from home from college, and one of my kids is very, very high D, and we're gonna be playing board games, and
Oh,
she's gonna
gosh.
be so competitive. But I guarantee you, she's not gonna win every time, and that's gonna be upsetting to her. But she's not gonna win every time.
Because every one of us can
Yeah.
be competitive. So, when we think about I styles, right? They're spontaneous, they're positive, they're disorganized. Sometimes when we think about the I style as being, spontaneous, they're just they're an emotional style. And sometimes we think, oh, wow, it's almost like they're just trying too hard. And for the styles that really aren't maybe as emotional, it don't oftentimes sometimes comes off as superficial or disingenuous.
That is so true, but we have to remember that that's not the actual case. And they really are no different from the other styles, but how they behave and how they want to be liked just makes that kind of behavior to appear to others that they may be a little bit superficial and that they may not be reliable. Yes, it is true that if you're an I style, you need to really pay close attention to making sure you follow up on what you promised to do and you pay attention to details. But by no means it means that I styles are superficial. That's the biggest misconception that I think most people have about I style.
I agree. I agree. And then, for the S styles, our S styles, they're laid back, they're patient, they're indecisive. But really, when we think of indecisiveness, it's our own perception of the S style at times. For their perspective, maybe it's like we think, oh, wow, they're indecisive. They're slow to make decisions. They can't decide. But we need to remember where the S style is coming from. Oftentimes, their decision-making process is just simply different from other styles, right?
It is different because they want to think about how their decisions impact other people. And they also have a very long-term perspective. They want to think about how we're going to get there. And they want to think about those steps that are required to really implement whatever we need to accomplish, and again the impact on other people. And like you said, sometimes people think they're indecisive, but deep down they actually know what they want to do. They just are a little bit slower sometimes expressing their final decision because they really want to think it through, and especially the impact on others, because they do not want to let other people down.
Right. And they also want to take in all the alternatives. They want to know what you think. They want to know what all the other team members think. They want that all factors into their decision making as well.
Very true. And of course, when people are not in agreement about what we should be doing as a team,
Mm-hmm.
let's say there are 10 team members and 9 people are in agreement, well, everything is going to proceed quickly, but then the 10th person has a different view, and that will slow down the S style because they do not want to exclude that team
That's a
member as
great
well.
point. Great point. So with the C style, C styles, we think of C styles, their attributes as being very analytical, timid. They don't express emotions, but I guarantee you, C styles have emotions. It's just because their energy and because they're a more task-oriented style, it typically doesn't show up on the surface like the more, the people-oriented styles. But C styles are not unemotional. It's just that we tend not to see them.
Yeah, if you think about what this really tells us is how we do things. And you are so right. C styles have such as many and as powerful and strong emotions that all the other styles have, but they're just more private. They don't want to talk about those emotions unless you're very close to them or they feel very comfortable and trust you. But they have those emotions. They just don't
Absolutely.
want to talk about them. They want to keep them to themselves. And what they really often believe is not appropriate to talk about those emotions with other people. And they don't want to bother you
Hmm.
by talking about those emotions. But by no means it means that they don't have any.
Exactly. And the analytical part kind of stands out to me because we talked about the I style just a couple minutes ago. You know, when we think of someone who's, you know, very analytical and logical and data driven, we sometimes assume that they're just automatically highly intelligent, which they totally could be, right? But then we assign the same misconception to the opposite of the I style because they're more disorganized or perceived as being disorganized and maybe more you know, they're emotion based. We assign the kind of flightiness or the kind of the further away from intelligence, and these again are misconceptions that we have. But just because you're analytical does not equate to being intelligent.
No, we have to remember that what we can measure is how we do things. We don't measure intelligence. We don't measure ability, those kind of
Thank you for
issues.
saying that.
So, uh, and again, let's make sure everybody understands. We're not saying that C styles are not intelligent, but
Exactly.
it doesn't equate to intelligence.
There you go. So just to kind of, I just wanted to have Marku kind of summarize just some main points with us. We gave you just some highlights into the misconceptions of each of the DISC styles. We were laughing at this comic earlier. It basically says, that's okay. I don't know what the chart means either. So it's probably the story of my life.
This looks like my flip chart from earlier this week in our staff meeting. But that being aside, so we always have to think about why we use assessments. And obviously we use extended DISC to help us to become more successful. And we always go back to those 4 steps, understanding that people are different, not better or worse. We create that confident self-awareness in step 2. Step 3, we identify the styles of others. Ideally, we actually have their assessment so we really understand their hardwired behavioral style. But it always comes down to the last and most important step. Now that I have this information, how do I modify my behavior? When it comes to misconceptions about other people, like we talked about earlier, is that the greatest challenge are with the people who are very different from us. And the difference is really driven by what is the DISC style that is least comfortable to us. That's the behavioral style. Many times we would actually really, really love to have, like I would like to have more I style because I love I styles because they seem to be having so much fun.
And I would love to have more D style because they're really good at making those non-emotional decisions that I hate making.
Right. And we want those other things, but at the same time, we really tend to carry the greatest misconceptions about other styles. So really, I think the key takeaway with this webinar is that, again, when we meet other people, when we're working with other people, really try to understand who they are. But most importantly, remember that the only thing we can control is our own behavior. And to really be very mindful and present about what kind of decisions and what kind of interpretations we make about others.
Right.
And not let those misconceptions really mislead us to path that is not going to create success we are really striving for.
Right. I think one of the things we said earlier is, you know, Mark, who mentioned like it's important always to try to identify the main DISC styles of others. However, you can also get yourself in trouble by jumping to conclusions too early. And we've talked about this in previous webinars. Again, based on those misconceptions, you know, we think, oh, wow, okay, I identified this person probably as an I style.
That's right. The biggest mistake you can make is that you identify somebody's style too early or incorrectly, and you start treating them as being that style. In fact, if you don't understand or not really, if you're not really confident who that person is, you are better off not adjusting your style at all. Just be yourself rather than trying to be something you are not and trying to match the behavioral style of the other person that is inaccurate.
Right. So we get that, you know, we assign these kind of behavioral traits to people because it just helps us to react quicker, it's easier. But sometimes these kind of behavioral traits turn into these kind of more deeply embedded misconceptions we have about people. So it's just constant. I think one good statement we should ask ourselves is when we're thinking about that person, is it really true?
That's it.
So thank you guys all for joining us today. We do have a new webinar as of 2020.
The little holiday break here because I'm sure everybody's very busy.
That's right. I know you guys will miss us, but it will be on the Extended Disc Sales 18 assessment on Wednesday, January 8th from 3 p.m. to 3:15 p.m. Central Standard Time. We also have some other webinars coming up as well, so please check our extendeddisc.org site under the Events tab.
Click on there and sign up. And even if you can attend, just make sure you register because we will send you the recording after the webinar.
So happy holidays to everybody, and we will see you in 2020.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
All right, take care.